When it comes to mass extinction, many people simply imagine the mass death of species. But in fact, mass extinction is one of the most devastating and haunting phenomena in Earth's history, where life is wiped out on a global scale in a short period of time measured by geological standards. According to the scientific definition, an event is called a mass extinction when at least 75% of the species on Earth become extinct in a period of less than 2 million years. It is not just a difficult period, it is a near-complete biological wipeout, resetting the entire ecological order on the planet. Over the course of more than 4.5 billion years of existence, Earth has experienced many different biological changes, but only a few events are devastating enough to be classified as mass extinctions. These events occur when the rate of extinction far exceeds the rate of evolution and the formation of new species, leaving life unable to recover. The result is a large part of the biosphere is wiped out, leading to the collapse of the food chain, causing the disappearance of entire ecosystems from the bottom of the ocean to the top of the mountains. And even more frightening, each time it marks the end of a biological era, paving the way for a completely new evolutionary cycle. It is worth noting that mass extinctions are not just stories of the distant past. Although the 5 major events in history, such as Ordovician, Devonian, Permian, Jurassic, and Cretaceous, all occurred hundreds of millions of years ago, scientists are now seriously warning that humanity may be causing the 6th mass extinction. A mass extinction that does not come from volcanoes, meteorites, or ice ages, but from the hands of humans themselves. Understanding the concept of mass extinction not only helps us look back at the history of the Earth, but also serves as a clear warning for the present and the future. With life having been wiped out 5 times, the question is, are we about to repeat the same scenario a 6th time without even realizing it? Mass extinctions do not happen randomly. They are usually triggered by cataclysmic events such as asteroid impacts, supervolcanic activity, extreme climate change, or long-term ecological imbalances. While the causes vary, the consequences are always devastating. Millions of years of evolution can be wiped out in the blink of a geological eye. And with each post-extinction rebirth, the biosphere takes a completely new direction. This explains why dinosaurs could dominate for hundreds of millions of years, then suddenly disappear, giving way to small animals that evolved into mammals, then primates, and finally humans. Although life on Earth has been on the brink of extinction many times, it has miraculously recovered, even emerging stronger after each collapse. And to better understand these rebirths from the ashes, let's delve into each of the most shocking milestones in the history of this planet, the 6 mass extinctions. Bloody milestones where millions of species were wiped out in a geological instant, but from which life began to write a new chapter. 1. Starting from the first mass extinction, the Ordovician period. The first known mass extinction in Earth's history occurred at the end of the Ordovician period about 447 to 443 million years ago. It was a time when life was still largely in the oceans, with marine life such as trilobites, corals, brachiopods, and ancient invertebrates dominating ecosystems. Yet in a short geological time, up to 85% of marine species disappeared, marking one of the most severe biological disasters the planet has ever suffered. The cause of the Ordovician Silurian extinction remains a matter of debate, but the most widely accepted hypothesis among scientists is that the culprit was a gamma-ray burst from a nearby star. The explosion destroyed the ozone layer, blocked sunlight, and caused global temperatures to plummet. The atmosphere became toxic with nitrogen and sulfur compounds, leading to global glaciation. The deep drop in temperature caused the ocean to shrink, the sea level dropped rapidly, and the coastal ecosystems, where most of the marine life at that time lived and thrived, disappeared. But the horror did not stop there. When the Ice Age ended abruptly, the Earth warmed up again, creating a second ecological heat shock. The warming caused the oceans to be severely oxygen deprived and at the same time formed dead zones flooded with hydrosulfide, a gas extremely toxic to most organisms. It was the combination of sudden cold, fluctuating sea levels, and toxic marine environments that caused a series of species that could not adapt in time, leading to mass extinction in both phases of the disaster. However, what was special about the Ordovician-Silurian extinction was that although the rate of species extinction was very high, the overall ecosystem structure did not change too drastically. Species that could withstand the environmental changes quickly adapted, refilling the ecological niches that had been vacated. In just 5 million years, a blink of an eye in geological terms, life had almost completely recovered, ushering in a new, more diverse evolutionary era. The Ordovician-Silurian extinction was the first demonstration that even without human intervention, the Earth could still produce the most severe cleansing scenarios. Life was challenged not only by meteorites and volcanoes, but also by the silent changes of space. And the big lesson from this event is that while the Earth can recover, not all species have the chance to start over. Once erased from the evolutionary stream, all traces are almost gone forever. That is what makes each extinction not just an end, but the irreversible disappearance of an entire living world that once existed. 2. The Late Devonian Mass Extinction. About 375 to 360 million years ago, the Earth entered a particularly long period of biological chaos, known as the Late Devonian Mass Extinction. Although it did not happen in a flash, it was a series of extinctions that lasted for millions of years, causing the disappearance of nearly 50% of marine genera and 19% of marine families. This biological catastrophe ended the golden age of many ancient groups of organisms, especially corals, trilobites, jawless fish, and primitive marine animals, causing widespread collapse of ocean ecosystems. What is special about this extinction is its habitat selectivity. While marine ecosystems were severely destroyed, terrestrial ecosystems were almost completely unaffected. Plants, insects, and land-dwelling species continued to develop relatively stably. This is a sign that the main culprit lies in the ocean, not in a meteorite or a cosmic collision, but in the Earth's own internal changes. Many hypotheses have been put forward, but the most widely accepted cause today is a severe reduction in oxygen in the oceans, creating vast dead zones. This was the result of a series of factors: the massive growth of land plants, which caused their roots to penetrate deep into the ground, promoting the weathering of rocks and dumping large amounts of nutrients into the ocean. Initially, this encouraged algae to bloom, but as the algae died and decomposed, they sucked up the oxygen in the water, leaving the entire seafloor in an anaerobic state. Marine life, especially those sensitive to oxygen, had no chance of survival. In addition, submarine volcanic eruptions in what are now the Siberian traps may have also contributed to the global climate imbalance. The huge amount of sulfur dioxide and CO2 released into the atmosphere caused acid rain and the greenhouse effect, warming the oceans, further accelerating the lack of oxygen. More worryingly, this was not a flash event, but a long process lasting from hundreds of thousands to tens of millions of years. This has led some scientists to consider the Late Devonian not a true extinction event, but a period of global evolutionary decline, when the rate of new species formation plummeted, causing life to quietly decline over time. However, despite its quiet nature, the consequences of this event cannot be underestimated. It wiped out entire ancient coral reefs, leaving marine ecosystems tens of millions of years to recover. This extinction also marked the decline of many groups of ostracods, the armored warriors that once dominated the oceans, giving way to modern bony and cartilaginous fish groups, the distant ancestors of today's sharks and bony fish. More importantly, the Late Devonian is a profound ecological lesson. The evolution of land plants can also cause catastrophe under the sea. It is a stark illustration of how life on Earth, whether in the jungle or the deep ocean, is interconnected and vulnerable. A seemingly small change in one ecosystem can have a domino effect, destroying a whole chain of links in another. 3. the Permian-Triassic extinction, when life was almost completely wiped out. In the more than 4.5 billion years of Earth's history, there has never been a biological catastrophe as devastating and comprehensive as the Permian-Triassic extinction, which occurred about 251 million years ago. This was not just a biological event, but a milestone marking the boundary between life and death. A time when 96% of marine life, 70% of terrestrial vertebrates, and 83% of insect genera became completely extinct. Scientists call this the Great Dying, the Great Death, because no other event has ever wiped out nearly all of the Earth's biodiversity to such an extent. The cause of this disaster was once a great mystery, but thanks to recent scientific discoveries, researchers have gradually found the culprit: a series of super eruptions in the Siberian Traps, where millions of cubic kilometers of lava erupted continuously for more than 1 million years, releasing huge amounts of greenhouse gases such as CO2 and methane into the atmosphere. The result was a chain reaction. Global temperatures soared, the oceans severely acidified, and oxygen levels in the water and air dropped to toxic levels. Life had nowhere to hide. The air was poisoned, the land burned, the ocean suffocated. The consequences of the Permian-Triassic extinction were not limited to the environmental aspect, but also collapsed the entire ecosystem structure that had taken hundreds of millions of years to build. From primitive coral reefs to large reptiles, from microorganisms in the ocean to giant ferns on land, almost everything was reset. Only about 10% of species survived, and it was from this surviving branch that all subsequent life on Earth, including humans, evolved. What makes the Permian extinction even more terrifying is how quickly it happened. Not over millions of years as previously thought, but perhaps as little as 8,000 to 100,000 years, an incredibly short time in geological terms. This meant that the ecosystem had no chance to adapt or recover. It was strangled in the process. The shock was too fast, too deep, and too unforgiving. Yet the miracle is that after that mass extinction, the Earth once again recovered. But this time, it started from almost zero. It was in the wake of this devastating biological cull that the dinosaurs' reptile ancestors emerged, paving the way for a whole new era. The Jurassic, a time of species that dominated the land, sea, and sky. The crisis destroyed most, but it also gave survival to those with superior adaptations. The Permian-Triassic extinction is a stark reminder of the fragility of ecosystems. When environmental factors are pushed to their limits, whether by nature or human intervention, even the most dominant species can be wiped out in the blink of an eye. It is not only a lesson from the past, but also a warning for the future, especially as the pace of climate change today shows signs of accelerating, similar to what happened during the Permian. 4. The Triassic and Jurassic mass extinction. About 200 million years ago, Earth experienced a mass extinction that is less talked about than other famous disasters, but played an extremely important role in shaping the future of life. It was the Triassic and Jurassic extinction event. Although it did not have the record-breaking extinction numbers of the Permian or Cretaceous, this mass extinction paved the way for the dominance of dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and giant reptiles of the Mesozoic era that lasted more than 135 million years. This event marked the boundary between the Triassic and Jurassic periods, when a series of creatures living on land and in the sea suddenly disappeared. In the oceans, entire ancient animal classes such as Conodonta, a group of jawless fish that once thrived, became completely extinct. On land, primitive reptiles such as Arctosauria lungfish and many large amphibians were also wiped out. A silent but thorough purge took place, eliminating species that could not adapt to the climate and environmental changes of the time. So, what caused this mass extinction? Scientists point out that the main cause most likely came from one of the largest series of volcanic eruptions in geological history, the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province Camp, a lava field of more than 11 million km², stretching across the area that is now North America, South America, Africa, and Europe. The lava erupted continuously for about 600,000 years, releasing large amounts of CO2 and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, causing severe climate change, acid rain, and ozone layer destruction. This was a period when the Earth was suffocating in a toxic mix of soaring temperatures, acidifying oceans, and disrupted food chains. In addition, this event coincided with the breakup of the supercontinent Pangaea, when continental plates began to separate and drift, creating new ecosystems, but also disrupting ancient environmental systems. Sea levels fluctuated, climates were disrupted, and the global carbon cycle was disrupted, all creating a series of shocks that left vulnerable species unable to survive. However, it was in this newly cleared ecological void that primitive dinosaurs and pterosaurs rose to prominence. Thanks to their superior adaptability, flexible biological structures, and rapid evolutionary rates, they dominated almost every ecosystem, from terrestrial forests to freshwater swamps to even the skies. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction was like a natural selection, inadvertently giving dominance to species that had previously been considered less prominent. As a result, the Jurassic period began as a prelude to one of the most glorious periods in the history of life, the Age of the Dinosaurs. This is a clear demonstration that in every time the Earth resets its ecosystem, the survivors are not necessarily the strongest, but the most adaptable. The giants of the Triassic were gone, and the dinosaurs, the latecomers, took their place with both majesty and dominance. 5. The Cretaceous, Paleogene mass extinction. About 66 million years ago, Earth witnessed one of the most famous and studied extinction events in history, the Cretaceous, Paleogene mass extinction. This was the event that wiped out all non-avian dinosaurs, ending the Mesozoic period, opening a new era, the Cenozoic, where mammals and eventually humans arose. But behind that giving way result was a series of biological disasters that spread across the planet, causing 75% of living species to disappear in the blink of a geological eye. The main cause of this disaster came from a giant asteroid called Chicxulub, about 10-15 kilometers in diameter, crashing into Earth at a speed of more than 72,000 km/h. The impact occurred in what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, creating a giant impact crater 180 km wide and more than 20 km deep, considered one of the largest impact craters ever discovered on the planet. When this celestial body penetrated the atmosphere, it not only exploded with billions of times more energy than a nuclear bomb, but also burned the air, throwing millions of tons of hot material into the atmosphere, causing a chain reaction of destruction on a global scale. Immediately after the impact, hot dust and ash clouds covered the atmosphere, completely blocking sunlight for many years. The prolonged darkness caused photosynthesis to stop, plants to die, and the entire natural food chain to collapse. Herbivores became extinct due to lack of food, and with it, the predatory ecosystem collapsed. At the same time, global acid rains, abrupt climate change, and waves of atmospheric poisoning turned the Earth into a living hell, a place with little light, no food, toxic air, and plunging temperatures. This event wiped out non-avian dinosaurs, mosasaurs, pterosaurs, corals, and ancient plants. The Earth was littered with corpses, forests burned, oceans turned cold, and skies were frozen in darkness. But surprisingly, smaller creatures such as rodents, amphibians, crocodiles, turtles, and more survived. They had low metabolisms and were less dependent on light, and it was this biological humility that saved life. The impact was not just a mass death, but the beginning of a whole new era. As the sun slowly emerged from decades of darkness, mammals began to flourish, occupying the remaining ecological niches. This was the time that marked the appearance and strong evolution of human ancestors, bringing the world into the Cenozoic period, the period of mammals, birds, and later humans. The Cretaceous Paleogene event is the clearest evidence that a single event, if strong enough, can completely change the history of the planet. And in the modern context, when the rate of greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, and ocean pollution is increasing at an unprecedented rate, the question is, are we creating a new Chicxulub with our own technology and behavior? 6. Holocene mass extinction, sixth about 10,000 years ago to present. Unlike the 5 previous mass extinctions caused by meteorites, volcanoes, or ice ages, the 6th mass extinction comes from an unprecedented cause in biological history: humans. This event did not start with a terrible explosion or a flash natural disaster, but a silent but continuous process of destruction lasting from about 10,000 years BC, the time when humans began to expand their territory, cultivate, and raise livestock, and is still going on right now, every day, every hour, every minute. According to a report by the International Union for Conservation of Nature (IUCN), between 1500 and 2009, at least 875 species of animals and plants have been officially recorded as extinct, but the actual number is many times higher because most species disappear before they leave a trace in the data. Biologists warn that the global extinction rate is now 100 to 10,000 times higher than the natural rate, with estimates of up to 140,000 species disappearing each year out of a total of about 14 million species that exist. The main causes come from activities that seem familiar in modern life: deforestation, urbanization, hunting, overfishing, pollution of land, water, air, and especially climate change. Humans not only kill the species they need, like elephants for ivory, tigers for medicine, whales for oil, but also destroy the habitats of creatures they are not familiar with. Every year, we consume more than 350 million tons of meat and 200 million tons of fish, mostly from species at the top of the food chain, leading to irreversible ecological collapse. In addition, the rate of deforestation reaches more than 10 million hectares per year, forcing thousands of species to lose their habitat. Plastic waste, industrial chemicals, and heavy metals are seeping from the ocean floor to the atmosphere and even into space. The amount of CO2 emitted by humans alone has reached 2,000 billion tons since the Industrial Revolution, far exceeding any natural process in Earth's history. What is the result? According to the Living Planet Report 2020, from 1970 to 2016, 68% of global wildlife disappeared. In South America, that number was as high as 94%. A 2018 study by the U.S. National Academy of Sciences found that 83% of wild mammals, 80% of marine animals, 50% of plants, and 15% of fish have disappeared since the rise of human civilization. The Earth is losing its ability to regenerate biologically, and this is no longer a prediction, but a reality that is happening every day. The irony is that while millions of species are being driven to extinction, others are thriving thanks to humans. Chickens, pigs, cows, and other industrially farmed animals. These creatures make up the majority of the planet's mammalian biomass, but they do not represent biodiversity. They represent Homo sapiens' absolute control and unfettered exploitation of nature. But there is hope. Global perceptions are changing. Many countries have begun to adopt serious conservation policies promoting recycling technology, green energy, and natural forest restoration. But time is running out. If humanity does not change, the 6th mass extinction will not only wipe out wild animals and plants, but also push us into a harsh, unbalanced, and possibly unlivable future. Understanding the 6th mass extinction is not to sow pessimism, but to awaken the collective survival consciousness of an entire civilization. If you are listening to these numbers with a little skepticism or guilt, it is time for humanity to have a revolution, not in technology, but in thinking and lifestyle. From the cold Ordovician extinction to the massive impact that wiped out the dinosaurs to the 6th mass extinction that is quietly underway caused by humans, all show one thing: life on Earth is not immortal. Each extinction is a reminder that the planet has repeatedly reset its ecosystems, not out of revenge, but out of balance. And now, we are living in the midst of a pivotal period in the planet's history. The question is, Are we the next chapter in life? Or the final chapter of a biological era? What do you think about the mass extinctions in Earth's history? Can humanity avoid a similar fate if we don't change? Leave a comment below. I'd love to read your thoughts and analysis. And if you find this video valuable, helping you gain a deeper understanding of the evolutionary and biological history of our planet, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on upcoming exciting topics. Let's explore together, be aware together, and protect the future of this Earth together.